I knew something was wrong before I even killed the engine. There was a silver Mercedes parked in my driveway. Every light in my house was blazing like somebody was hosting Christmas in July, and through the cracked kitchen window, I could hear music. Old jazz, low and scratchy, the kind my late uncle used to play on Sunday mornings. Then I heard a woman laughing upstairs. Not nervous laughter either, comfortable laughter. The kind of laugh people make when they think they own the place. I sat there in my rental car at nearly 11:30 at night, exhausted from a 14-hour flight home from Amsterdam, staring at my own house like I was the intruder. And that was the exact moment I realized my HOA president had finally gone completely insane. My name's Daniel Mercer. I'm 46 years old, and 6 months before all this happened, I inherited the kind of house people slow down to stare at when they drive through the neighborhood. A 3-story brick colonial in Briar Glen, North Carolina, with white pillars out front and an old wraparound porch that creaked in the most comforting way imaginable. My Uncle Harvey left it to me after he passed unexpectedly from stroke. He was one of those old-school men who fixed clocks for fun and wrote grocery lists in fountain pen. The house still smelled faintly like cedarwood and pipe tobacco when I moved in. After my divorce, honestly, it felt less like an inheritance and more like a rescue raft. My ex-wife got the beach condo, half my retirement, and most of my ability to trust people. The house was the one thing in my life that actually felt solid again, which is probably why Cynthia Holloway hated me the second I moved in. Cynthia was the HOA president of Briar Glen for almost a decade, though president isn't really the right word. Warden would have fit better. She was in her early 50s, always dressed like she had a lunch reservation at a country club nobody liked her at, and she walked around the neighborhood carrying this little leather binder like it contained nuclear launch codes. First week I moved in, she showed up while I was still unpacking boxes. Didn't introduce herself. Didn't welcome me to the neighborhood. She pointed at my uncle's bronze mailbox and said, "That color hasn't been HOA approved since 2018. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "You'll need to replace it within 10 days, she said, handing me a violation notice like she was serving a warrant. Or there'll be a fine. I remember looking at that woman thinking, this can't be a real person. But apparently it was. And once Cynthia started, she never stopped. My trash bins were visible from the street for too long. My porch lights were too warm-toned. My son Caleb parked his truck on the street during a weekend visit, and suddenly it was disrupting neighborhood symmetry, whatever the hell that means. Meanwhile, half the neighborhood ignored the same rules every day, and nobody said a word. One afternoon, my next-door neighbor, an older widow named Marianne, leaned across the hedge while I was mowing and quietly said, "Don't take it personal, honey. Cynthia likes controlling people, especially people she envies." I didn't understand what she meant until later. Briar Glen had 2 sections. The newer homes near the entrance where Cynthia lived, and the older estate properties deeper in the neighborhood. My uncle's house was one of the largest in the entire development. Cynthia had spent years trying to buy one herself according to Marianne, but never could afford it after her husband left. Suddenly her behavior made a whole lot more sense. About 2 months after moving in, I had to leave for Europe for a cybersecurity conference. 3 weeks overseas. Before I left, Cynthia appeared at my front door out of nowhere wearing this fake smile that looked stapled onto her face. "You really shouldn't leave a property this valuable unattended," she said, glancing past me into my foyer. "I could check on things while you're away." I thanked her and told her my security system had it covered. That smile disappeared instantly. "Well," she said coldly, adjusting the strap on her purse, "sometimes people don't realize what kind of problems can happen when a home sits empty." At the time, I thought it was just another passive-aggressive HOA comment. Looking back now, I realized she was warning me. So there I was 3 weeks later, standing outside my own house after returning home early, hearing someone laugh upstairs while jazz music drifted through the walls. My pulse was hammering so hard I could feel in my neck. I used the hidden spare key Uncle Harvey kept beneath a loose stone near the garden gate and slipped quietly through the back door. The smell hit me first. Expensive perfume, vanilla and jasmine. Cynthia's perfume. Then came the second smell. Food. Garlic butter, red wine, something roasted. Somebody had been cooking in my kitchen. I stepped into the hallway and froze. There were women's shoes beside my staircase. A silk scarf draped over my banister. 2 wine glasses sitting on my coffee table beside an open bottle from my private collection. And upstairs, I heard water running in my master bathroom. Then a woman's voice started singing softly through the steam. That's when I realized this woman wasn't just checking on my house. She was living in it. And when I finally walked upstairs and saw who stepped out of my shower wearing my dead uncle's monogram bathrobe, everything changed. Cynthia Holloway stood there in the doorway of my bathroom, wrapped in my uncle's dark blue bathrobe like she belonged in it, steam curling around her shoulders, wet hair clinging to her neck, and for a few seconds neither of us said a word. I just stared at her, honestly, because my brain couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. It felt surreal, like walking into the wrong house in a dream, except every detail was painfully real. Then she looked at me and said the single dumbest sentence I've ever heard in my life. You weren't supposed to be home until next Friday. Not hello. Not oh my God. Just pure irritation that I'd interrupted whatever fantasy she'd been living inside my house. I remember laughing, not because anything was funny, but because when people shock you badly enough, your body doesn't know what else to do. Cynthia, I said slowly, why are you in my shower? She tightened the robe around herself and rolled her eyes like I was the difficult one. I've been maintaining the property while you were gone. Maintaining? I looked past her in my bathroom, where her makeup bag sat beside my sink, candles burned on the counter, and one of her bras hung over my towel rack. You call this maintaining? She stepped past me into the hallway like she owned the place. You're being dramatic, Daniel. Dramatic. That word almost sent me through the roof. I followed her downstairs, and every step revealed another violation. My dining room table had fresh flowers on it. Somebody had rearranged my furniture. My uncle's leather reading chair had been moved beside the fireplace with a throw blanket folded over the arm like it was staged for a magazine shoot. Worst of all, framed family photos had been removed from shelves. Pictures of my parents. Caleb as a kid. Uncle Harvey holding his fishing trophies. Gone. Where are my pictures? I asked quietly. Cynthia opened the wine fridge and poured herself another glass without even looking at me. I packed some things away temporarily. The house photographs better with cleaner lines. I felt something cold settle into my chest then, because suddenly this wasn't some lonely woman playing house anymore. This was calculated. Photographs. I asked. She finally looked at me and smiled. That was the moment everything clicked. You've been showing my house. Cynthia took a sip of wine like we were discussing weather. Luxury buyers respond emotionally to aspirational spaces. I just stared at her. You've lost your damn mind. She sighed dramatically and set the glass down. Daniel, please. Do you know how difficult it is to sell upper-tier properties in this market? People need atmosphere. They need to feel what living here could be like. Selling. My voice echoed through the kitchen. You don't own this house. No, she said calmly. But absentee ownership creates opportunities. That sentence still gives me chills, because she said it so casually, like she genuinely believed she had a right to what she was doing. Then she walked over to my kitchen drawer, pulled out a folder, and slid papers across the granite countertop. I anticipated you might overreact, she said. The document on top read Temporary Property Care Agreement. My signature sat at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature. Not really. It looked close enough at first glance, but cybersecurity work trains you to notice patterns. Tiny things. Pressure inconsistencies. Letter flow. The fake signature had hesitation marks all through it. Whoever copied it traced the shape, but not the rhythm. It was like hearing someone imitate a song without understanding the melody. I looked up slowly. You forged my signature. Cynthia crossed her arms. You verbally authorized me before your trip. No, I absolutely did not. That's not how I remember it. I pulled my phone from my pocket, right in front of her, and hit record. Her face tightened instantly. What are you doing? Protecting myself. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You really want to do this publicly? You're standing in my house wearing my robe after forging legal documents. Cynthia, I protected this place while you were overseas. By drinking my wine and moving into my bedroom. Her jaw clenched. For the first time all night, I saw anger crack through that polished country club mask. You have no idea what this neighborhood takes to maintain, she snapped. People like you move in here and think money excuses everything. People like me? She laughed bitterly. Divorced men who inherit things they didn't earn. That one landed harder than I expected. Because underneath all the fraud and insanity, there it was. Jealousy. Raw and ugly. This house wasn't just property to Cynthia. It represented every life she thought she deserved and never got. Before I could answer, a toilet flushed somewhere down the hall. Both of us froze. Then footsteps approached the kitchen, and a man walked in wearing a police uniform. Officer Raymond Pike, mid-40s, Lukal Patrokop, married, 2 daughters. I'd met him once at a neighborhood barbecue where he spent 20 minutes bragging about smoker recipes and college football. Now he stood inside my kitchen at midnight like this was perfectly normal. Everything okay here? He asked carefully. Cynthia immediately shifted gears, her voice turning soft and helpless. Daniel's upset because he came home early. Raymond looked confused. You said he approved the arrangement. There was no arrangement. I cut in. She broke into my house. Raymond's eyes flicked towards Cynthia. And right there, I saw it. Panic. Not guilt. Fear. Because suddenly he realized he might have walked into something criminal. I held up my phone. This entire conversation is being recorded. Cynthia's face went pale. You can't record people without consent. In North Carolina? I smiled coldly. Yeah, I can. Raymond took a slow breath and rubbed the back of his neck. Daniel, maybe everybody should calm down. Get out of my house. Cynthia stepped toward him immediately. He snipped. Both of you. Out. Now. Silence filled the kitchen. Jazz still crackled softly from the living room speakers. Somewhere upstairs, water dripped steadily from the shower faucet she'd left running. Finally, Raymond nodded once. Come on, Cynthia. She looked at him like she expected him to protect her. But even he knew this had gone way too far. She grabbed her purse aggressively and stormed toward the foyer, heels slamming against hardwood. Before leaving, she turned back toward me one last time and smiled again. But this time the mask was completely gone. You should have let me help you, Daniel, she said softly. Now things are going to get unpleasant. Then she walked out my front door into the cold midnight air. I locked the deadbolt behind them and stood there in silence for almost a full minute, staring at my own reflection in the glass. The house suddenly felt contaminated somehow, like strangers had been walking around inside my memories wearing muddy shoes. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from my security backup server. Multiple camera feeds had been manually disabled 3 days after my departure. My stomach dropped, because that meant Cynthia hadn't just been living here. She planned this carefully from the beginning. And when I opened the hidden cloud archive attached to my system, I found something that changed the entire story. Hours and hours of footage. Cynthia giving private tours inside my home. Wealthy couples walking through my bedrooms. People drinking wine in my dining room while she talked about exclusive ownership opportunities. And in one clip, she stood in my office holding paperwork from my personal filing cabinet while Raymond Pike watched the front window like security. That's when I realized this wasn't HOA harassment anymore. This was a criminal operation. And somehow, my house had become the centerpiece of it. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house felt wrong now. The settling pipes, the creak in the hallway outside my bedroom, even the wind brushing tree branches against the windows. It no longer felt like home. It felt like evidence. Around 3 in the morning, I sat in my uncle's old study wearing sweatpants and staring at security footage frame by frame while cold coffee turned bitter beside me. And the deeper I looked, the uglier it got. Cynthia hadn't just been using my house for fake luxury tours. She'd been building an entire business around it. One clip showed her leading a couple through my kitchen while laughing softly and saying, "The owner travels constantly, so discretion is very important." Another showed her standing beside my wine cellar, talking about private acquisition possibilities. Acquisition. She was trying to sell something she didn't own. But the worst video came just before sunrise. Cynthia sat at my dining room table with Raymond Pike, while papers were spread out in front of them. I zoomed in until the image blurred. Property lien forms, transfer requests, emergency occupancy notices. My blood ran cold. They were trying to create legal leverage over the house while I was overseas. Maybe not outright steal it immediately, but pressure me, confuse records, bury me under fake violations until they could force some kind of distress sale. Suddenly, all those HOA fines made sense. This had never been personal annoyance. It was strategy. They wanted the house. By morning, I called the one person I trusted with ugly situations like this, my cousin Natalie. Natalie used to work fraud investigations for a bank in Charlotte before opening her own legal consulting office, and she had this terrifying ability to stay calm no matter how insane things became. I sent her the footage. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Danny," she said immediately, "you need an attorney and you need one today." By noon, we were sitting in a downtown law office across from sharp-eyed attorney named Rebecca Sloan while she watched Cynthia parade strangers through my living room on a laptop screen. Rebecca didn't interrupt once. Didn't blink much either. When the final clip ended, she leaned back slowly and said, "Well, this is spectacularly illegal." Those might have been the most comforting words I'd heard all week. Rebecca moved fast. Civil filings, fraud complaints, emergency injunctions. She explained everything in calm, precise sentences while typing like her keyboard owed her money. But then she paused halfway through reviewing the footage and rewound one specific clip. Cynthia was showing my upstairs hallway to a wealthy older man wearing a gray sport coat. "Pause there," Rebecca said quietly. "Do you know who that is?" I shook my head. She zoomed in slightly. "That's Arthur Bellamy." "Who?" "Real estate investor. Deep pockets. Quiet reputation." She looked at me carefully. "He's also been trying to buy estate homes throughout Briar Glen for over 2 years. Suddenly another puzzle piece slid into place. Cynthia wasn't freelancing this operation alone. She'd aligned herself with investors trying to quietly take over older properties in the neighborhood before values exploded. And vulnerable homeowners, widows, retirees, divorced people like me were easier to pressure out. Marion had been right from the beginning. Cynthia didn't just want control. She wanted ownership. That evening, the HOA called an emergency board meeting. Funny how fast they could organize meetings when their own interests were threatened. I almost didn't go. Rebecca insisted. "Bullies count on silence," she told me while straightening the collar on her blazer. "Tonight we make noise." The clubhouse was packed when we walked in. Residents lined the walls, whispering nervously, while Cynthia sat at the front table, wearing a white suit like some suburban dictator preparing for a press conference. Raymond stood near the doorway out of uniform, pretending not to know her. "Coward." Cynthia started immediately. "We're here to address serious allegations and concerning behavior from Mr. Mercer." Rebecca leaned toward me and muttered, "Amazing. They always open with projection." I nearly smiled. Cynthia launched into this polished speech about unstable homeowners and harassment and protecting community values. The whole time she never once looked directly at me. Then she made the mistake that ended her. "At no point," she said dramatically, Has anyone associated with this board acted improperly regarding Mr. Mercer's property? Rebecca stood up before I could even breathe. Interesting, she said calmly. Then she connected my laptop to the projector behind them. The first video filled the screen. Cynthia walking through my bedroom in silk pajamas carrying a glass of wine. The room went dead silent. Another clip played. Cynthia opening my filing cabinet. Another. Raymond Pike standing guard beside my kitchen while strangers tour my house. Murmurs exploded across the room. One older man actually stood up and yelled, "What the hell is this?" Cynthia's face lost all color. "Those videos are manipulated," she snapped. Rebecca didn't even flinch. "Wonderful," she replied. "Then you'll have no objection to forensic analysis during discovery." Raymond looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. But I wasn't done. I stood slowly and looked around the room at all those neighbors who'd spent years afraid of this woman. "You know what the craziest part is?" I said quietly. "I actually believed for months that I was the problem. Nobody moved. That's what people like Cynthia do. They convince decent people to question themselves while they slowly take pieces of your life." Marian started crying softly in the second row. A few others nodded, because suddenly everybody was remembering their own violations, their own intimidation, their own moments of feeling trapped. Then Cynthia finally snapped completely. She slammed both hands against the table and pointed at me. "You inherited that house by luck," she shouted. "You didn't earn it. You didn't build this community. People like you ruin neighborhoods because you have no respect for structure." There was again, not rules, not standards, envy. Pure barning envy. And honestly, hearing it out loud almost made me pity her. Almost. The board voted that night to suspend Cynthia pending investigation. Raymond quietly left through the back exit before anyone could stop him. Cowered twice over. But the real ending came 3 months later when fraud charges officially hit both of them along with Arthur Bellamy and 2 others tied to property acquisition schemes across the county. Turns out my house wasn't the first target, just the first one where somebody fought back hard enough to expose everything underneath. These days the house feels like home again. Caleb visits more often. Marianne still brings over peach cobbler every Sunday like clockwork. And sometimes at night, I sit on that old wraparound porch listening to the cicadas and thinking about Uncle Harvey. Funny thing is, I used to think inheritance meant money or property. But now I think maybe real inheritance is learning when something worth protecting lands in your hands. And having the backbone to fight for it when somebody tries taking it away. Anyway, tell me honestly down in the comments, do you think Cynthia was just a power-hungry HOA nightmare? Or do you think there are probably more people like her quietly operating inside neighborhoods all over America right now? And if somebody tried turning your home into their personal business while you were gone, what would you have done differently?